I'll just open up the discussion. As I have been introduced, I'm coming from UNCDF, so it's one of the UN agencies with capital mandate. So we do support startups in the ecosystem, and specifically those who are operating in the financial sector, so the fintech. And for us, we do kind of like different supports. I think some of them, my panelists have kind of like alluded to some of the acceleration work that is happening in the market and where we are part of. And from that space, we do provide both technical and a bit of catalytic funding. I wouldn't say more financing, but really small grants to keep the lights on and kind of like prepare these startups to be investor ready, or to be able to access more of like commercial capital later on from other type of funders in the ecosystem. And in that space, I think we have kind of like also started looking at why, for instance, we don't see a lot of commercial funding coming to Tanzania in comparison to other markets or the big fours in the continent. And one of the exercises that we have been looking at, because we work closely, like I said, with the market, but at the same time with the government, particularly the likes of the central bank, with the regulator of the financial sector and other regulatory bodies. So we started looking at the different policies that are in place that could affect the flow of funding or the financing into the country. And there are a couple of things. So the research is not yet finalized, but we have some initial insights that we are picking up that I think will be relevant to be taken upon for consideration. And just to kickstart, I mean, we looked at our, I think most of you who have been in the innovation ecosystem, you have been hearing these issues around the requirement for funders or to register with FCC. So this is the Fair Competition Commission. And the threshold for Tanzania, as an example, is relatively low when you compare to other countries. So I think for a lot of like external VCs, it seems like you have to go through a lot of hurdles, even if you are bringing small amount of money, because I think the threshold for Tanzania is about 1.5 million, if I'm not mistaken about the numbers. When you look at other countries, it starts from 10 million. So somebody who wants to put in at least even 3 or 4 millions in the country, US dollars, I mean, you start thinking of all these regulatory hurdles that you would have to fulfill. And that sort of like deter the inflows of capital, particularly the venture capital funding. The other element that we are picking up from the market is when companies are accessing external debt, there is a requirement in our laws that they need to register with the central bank. So you need to be able to register before your debt, your credit comes into the country. Again, that also kind of like present certain hurdles for people to be able to access capital from outside, because the registration itself might take longer, or sometimes somebody receives funds before the registration is completed, and that introduces a number of challenges in relation to that. But this is not to say it's all bad, because we are also seeing from the government side, there are some initiatives that are taking place to see how we mobilize capital, even domestically. So I know the Capital Market Authority started looking at crowdfunding regulations. This is a good move to ensure that people can be able to mobilize funding domestically from different people who are looking to sort of like support the startup ecosystem. We are also seeing the emergence of angel investment investor networks within the country. So some of them are happening organically, some of them are kind of like catalyzed by supporters in the ecosystem. But this is all in an effort to see how do we ensure the different high net worth individuals we have in Tanzania can also contribute to providing financing into our ecosystem. The last element that I would was to touch on, again, from where we stand, we have also been working with the Bank of Tanzania to see the possibility of facilitating flow of remittances and funding from the diaspora community, because we do understand we do have Tanzanians in different parts of the world who would like to support and provide financing that could be directed into some of these innovation ecosystem. So how do we address certain challenges in the policy and regulatory environment that can facilitate inflow of funding from the diaspora and migrants of Tanzania to invest in the country? So thank you.
Asante sana, Aneth. Before you pass this, I'm doing my second round of questions starting with you, and thank you so much. I just want you to briefly mention, Tanzania has been, and Joe probably could add up, and probably Mr. Mafuru when you come to give us a quick overview, but we've not been attracting financing to startups and innovations in Tanzania as much as most East African countries have, including Kenya. And I'm going to Mtambalike later on to ask him why. Kenya's done 3 years of Innovation Week, we've done more than 10, but they've gone way ahead of us. So Aneth, maybe to begin with you, what do you think that we need to do, be it policy-wise, be it environment-wise, to attract more funding for startups and early businesses in Tanzania? Sure. Briefly, snappy, and then I'm opening the floor after my final round. Karibu.
Okay. Thank you. So I think I started alluding to some of the policy-related issues, but at the same time, also I think there are aspects of the market that we need also to do something, because money would go to places where there is something to attract it. So from the ecosystem itself, I think we are moving in the right direction in terms of like supporting these young innovators or startups that are available, because you want, as an investor, you would want to go and invest in a company that is promising, that is going to give you a return. So probably that was kind of like getting slow in Tanzania, but now I feel like we are in the right space. And we are already starting to see some of these investors coming and looking at the market. I think recently we have seen a number of Tanzanian startups that have been able to raise a sizable amount from outside, the likes of Dawa Mkononi, if any of you have been following the space, or the like of Ramani. So that, I think, is already giving you good signals in terms of like how we could see Tanzania in the next 5 years or whatnot. But I think the other bit, if you allow me, in terms of like what we have been picking up from the study, why from the investor's perspective, Tanzania might be a bit difficult in comparison to other countries. I had mentioned the issue of FCC registration or notification, but also I think the capital controls that we have, in the sense that some investors are a bit worried to bring money into the country, because